I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for April the 29th, 2025. Now, there's actually not a whole lot going on news-wise today. Of course, by next week, the Vatican is supposed to have their conclave electing the next pope. Yesterday, the Liberal Party won in the Canadian election. So there continues to be some speculation there, but on the whole, this is a Tuesday, so there's not a whole lot of news. But we do have something very important to discuss. Our theology roundup. The small size of today's Messianic movement. How do you navigate through a very small Messianic movement? Now, I do have some important things to say about this, but we've also got some things which can help you. The first one comes from our Outreach Israel bookstore, so outreachisraelbookstore.com, our ministry workbook, The Messianic Walk. This is something which came as a direct result of me teaching the new members, new foundations class at my local congregation. And it was originally released in 2018. And it discusses not just participating in the Messianic movement, i.e. the Messianic walk, but also what that can mean on a congregational basis and a slightly larger basis. And so we definitely talk about what it means to be part of a rather small Messianic faith community. And one of the chapters in the Messianic Walk workbook is navigating through a very small Messianic movement. This article was featured today on Messianicapologetics.net, so you can click here. You can scroll down and the PDF file from the Messianic Walk is accessible. So the smallness of the Messianic movement. Having been involved in the Messianic community now for 30 years almost this fall, our family can definitely say now, without hesitation, that if you have come into the Messianic movement, you've come into Messianic Judaism from an evangelical Protestant background. There are going to be areas of overlap, but there are also going to be many other things where there isn't overlap. Messianic congregations and synagogues are not evangelical churches. The Messianic movement, just like the Jewish community, has a great deal of plurality. Think about this for a moment. There are somewhere now in the realm of between 17 to 18 million Jewish people on planet Earth. The worldwide Jewish population is about 17 to 18 million. There are in North America various Protestant denominations which have more people registered on the books than there are Jews on planet Earth. And of course, within the Jewish community, you've got Orthodox, conservative, Reform. You've got Jews who are very religious. You've got Jews who are non-religious. You've got Jews who are agnostic and atheist. So when you attend a conservative or Reform temple, you can expect a lot of different ideologies and a lot of different views to be present. And they're just, because the Jewish community has to stick together, they're just all thrown in there, and people learn how to handle the plurality. There are evangelical people who can handle that plurality. There are others who cannot handle that plurality. As an example, I remember back in, it probably would have been 2017, 2018, I was at my local congregation teaching the new members, new foundations class, and we were teaching it in kind of an open area where there was a lot of foot traffic, people coming into the service. And there would be people who were not a part of the class officially, but who would sit down and kind of audit it or sit in. And yes, they would ask questions and they would offer comments and observations, and that was fine. But I remember telling the attendees, I said, look, here at this congregation, here at this assembly, and at many other assemblies, you're going to see a plurality of views on different theological issues. So, for example, there are people here who believe in the ongoing validity of the spiritual gifts. There are people here who are cessationists and believe the gifts terminated with the death of the apostles. There are people here who hold to a Calvinistic soteriology, meaning that they believe that God has ordained some to salvation and some to damnation, and that those with salvation can never lose it. And there are other people here who adhere to an Arminian soteriology, meaning that God knows in his foreknowledge the decision people are going to make, and that however unlikely it may be, if someone commits blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, someone can lose their salvation. And I remember saying that, and there was this older lady who just was so shocked because nobody had ever told her that there is a plurality of views on these kinds of issues. And I said, yes, and there are people here who believe in an any moment pre-tribulation rapture, and there are people who adhere to a post-tribulational gathering of the saints into the clouds. And of course, you could go through an entire litany of issues and be able to quickly see how much of a plurality there is in the Messianic community. There are people who believe that only men can be leaders of the assembly. There are people in the Messianic community who believe that both men and women can be leaders of the assembly. And what can make this challenging for a lot of people from evangelical backgrounds is, we don't have, as the Messianic movement, a movement composed of Jewish believers in Israel's Messiah from a diverse array of Jewish backgrounds, as well as from a wide number of national backgrounds, meaning that, they come from different countries. Many of them have come to North America. They are first or second generation. We've got a lot of non-Jewish people from a diverse array of Christian backgrounds that were all thrown together. And how do we sort through this plurality? Well, ultimately, the answer is we have to focus on the common salvation of Yeshua, his work on the tree, and the Messianic mission, Jewish outreach, Jewish evangelism, standing with Israel, standing against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. But so much of that has to be experienced in person. And for a lot of people from evangelical backgrounds where they're part of a denomination that, has, centuries of establishment and many centuries of going through different theological issues, and they've worked through a lot of the nuts and bolts of this and nuts and bolts of that. And, if you disagree with that denomination, if you disagree with First Church, or you don't find a home at First Church, you can easily find Second Church across the street or Third Church down the road. And people in the Messianic community do not have that luxury. And I know that I also deal with a lot of people out there, particularly in more the Hebrew roots or one law, one Torah, or now pro-Nomian sector. They assume a lot of things about the Messianic Jewish movement, different organizations. And then I ask them, have you ever attended a Messianic Jewish congregation on Shabbat? I mean, that's a pretty basic. Well, no, I haven't. Well, is it because there's not one located near you? Well, no, all I should have to do is read the statement of belief or read a few books or articles. That's not sufficient. If someone wants to make a decisive opinion about a particular group, at least have the courtesy to attend one or two Shabbat services on Saturday morning before you then begin to extrapolate an opinion or a position. Because there is something to be said about experiencing something in person, going to a local congregation, a synagogue, going to a national conference level event, than just reading what someone said on paper, which might be dated from 15 to 20 years ago. Now, there can be some good things about being a small faith community, and there can be some challenging things about being part of a small faith community. A small faith community means, more likely than not, that there are going to be some demographic imbalances, as congregations and synagogues are only so big. Now, what do I mean by a demographic imbalance? Look at who is in attendance. Look at who the members are. What are their age group? What is their socioeconomic background? What background do they come from ethnically? Are they Jewish? Are they this, that, whatever? A lot of young people wonder, am I the only person who is a teenager here? Am I the only person who is in my early to mid 20s here? There can be demographic imbalances in a Messianic congregation, which you might not always see at a conservative or reformed synagogue, and you certainly wouldn't see it in an evangelical community church, probably. A great number of the people I interact with in today's Messianic community, actually, I've gotten to know as a direct result of not necessarily attending my local congregation. Now, I've got some really good, Messianic Jewish friends and other friends from my local congregation, so I'm not trying to downplay that. But a lot of the people I know and interact with, I've gotten to know as a result of attending a larger event of some kind, a regional or national conference. Some people I've gotten to first know as a result of some kind of social media exchange. You found me on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, now X, and then we connect at some larger event or whatever the case may be, however our paths may cross in person. Being part of a small faith community actually does have some advantages. Many of us know each other. We are to some degree involved in one another's lives, and we all know what is happening. Smallness at the same time has the same disadvantages when you think about it. We know each other. We are involved with one another's lives, and we know what is happening. The disadvantage is that we know what is happening and people talk to one another. And some of that talk can borderline on gossip. When there is a situation or an incident within the Messianic sphere of influence, especially when it involves people we know or people we are acquainted with, that can make resolving something a challenge. When you're part of an evangelical denomination, which has 5 or 6 million members, and Pastor X is guilty of sin Y, it's just not going to affect you in the same way when you're a part of a very small, sometimes closed Messianic Jewish movement, Messianic Jewish sphere of influence, and incident X occurs. How do we resolve it? People are already talking, and it can make things more difficult sometimes. In apologetics, of course, apologetics is the defense of the faith. We are here to help stabilize things. We're here to help resolve things, but we're not here to simply maintain the status quo. But because of the small size of the Messianic community from time to time, this means that we have to wait things out in a way which you may not necessarily have to do in a mainstream synagogue or a mainstream church. And there have to be, at times, some creative ways regarding how to address a matter, discuss an issue, prepare people even for having that talk about issue X, subject Y, controversy Z. I was reminded recently, because of some things which have happened, some of the religious dramas over the past several years, of what my great-grandfather had to do. My great-grandfather, Marvin Franklin, was a bishop in the Methodist Church in the 1940s and 1950s. And in the 1950s, he was Bishop of Mississippi. And of course, the big controversy in the 1950s was integration. And he had people in his churches, which he oversaw, who thought that integration is not proceeding as fast as it should be. Bishop Franklin, we should accelerate this. He had other people in his churches who thought that integration was straight from the pit of hell and it needed to stop. And so what was his position regarding integration? It's going to proceed at the pace of the Holy Spirit, the pace best determined by God for our conference here in the state of Mississippi, for the Methodist Church of Mississippi. And from time to time, we run across controversies which hit the Messianic sphere of influence where we have to approach them in the same way. There are people who, you are not going fast enough with seeing this taken care of. You need to be more proactive regarding this. Other people, you need to stop discussing this. You need to stop mentioning this. Who are you? Blah, 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 blah. Rather, we need to tell people, look, this is what's happening. You need to pray that any possible damage, any possible harm is quickly taken care of. But the Lord is going to get the Lord's work done at the Lord's pace. And these are the things which are happening. And just like I've had to sort through this issue, sort through this controversy, so do other people have to sort through this issue and sort through this controversy. And from time to time, we are hamstrung because of the smallness of our faith community. We can't always resolve things in the same way as would be resolved or taken care of if we were part of a much larger group. So I think that this is something important to keep in mind, because as we do get closer and closer to the Lord's return, there are going to be more issues, more controversies, things are going to get more complicated, whether it's theology, whether it's some dramatic incident, or whether it's something out there in the world of ideas, especially since October the 7th, 2023, we're going to have to deal with. All right, so we don't have a huge amount of news for today. When we got started, I mentioned, of course, the ongoing papal conclave in Rome. By this time next week, we could have a new pope. Likewise, yesterday, there was an election in Canada. How is that going to change global dynamics? Certainly the global economic situation, we don't know yet. Okay, so all of these links I'm going to go through regarding the news, they will be available for you to access when this episode is archived on MessianicApologetics.net. And these are things I mainly encounter passively on social media. So Twitter, now X, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, those kinds of venues. Once in a while, one of you will send me something to pass on. All right, so we're going to get started with this post from the X channel Forgotten History. Just learned something crazy today while digging into ancient Sumerian history. Turns out the Bible's Garden of Eden story isn't actually the original. Way before that, the Sumerians, like 6,000 years ago, were already telling stories about a paradise called Dilmun, a perfect place with no death, no sickness, no pain. In their version, a god breaks a rule, eats some sacred plants, gets cursed, and paradise is lost. Sound familiar? It's basically Adam, Eve, and the forbidden fruit all over again. And the conclusion here is, It's crazy how ancient myths got recycled and rebranded over time, and people today still treat them like 100% the original. I mean, no disrespect to anyone's beliefs, just sharing what I found. Always think for yourself. I remember almost 30 years ago when I was a freshman at the Christian school here in Dallas. Part of our summer reading was we had to read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of those ancient creation and flood stories. And of course, in our history class, we had to discuss, okay, what is similar, which we see here in Gilgamesh and Atrahasis, to the Genesis account of creation and the flood. And I was informed pretty early in my life that there were other creation stories and myths out there which were similar to what is seen in Genesis. Now, if you have a study Bible worth the paper it's printed on, it's going to talk about in its introduction or annotations on Genesis something like this right here. But later, when I attended seminary, the main thing, the Old Testament introduction, we were directed to look for is, yes, there are these other creation stories out there and other flood stories out there, and they're very similar to what's seen in Genesis. But it's not the overlap of agreement we need to be paying attention to. It's the areas of disagreement. That is where we will find that the Holy Scriptures have the edge, as it were. So, for example, in the Mesopotamian flood account, you see that the gods cannot sleep. And so a flood is sent to basically wipe out humanity. Yet in the Genesis flood account, you see what? The world is filled with sin. It's filled with murder. The only people who are righteous are Noah and his family. They have to be saved because humanity has reached a point of no return and God has got to start over. Those are the kinds of differences you look for when you encounter ancient creation and flood stories. And, well, is it possible that the ancient Jews in Babylon picked these things up and then changed the names here or there? This is not an area where today's Messianic community, and I mean this with all the love and respect in the world, it doesn't do very well with some of these matters. Most of these kinds of issues are just kind of put aside for another day, and that other day just never tends to come. But this is a big part of apologetics moving ahead, because there are going to be more and more people who encounter these kinds of things on social media, and they're going to wonder, well, which came first, Mesopotamian mythology or what the Israelites had in the Torah? All right, here's a news story. This is from Breitbart from yesterday, April the 28th. Russia's Vladimir Putin has unilaterally announced a 72-hour humanitarian truce with Ukraine to coincide with the celebrations to mark of the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany, prompting Ukraine to question why Russia is still dragging its heels on a full 30-day ceasefire. Look, there are a lot of questions about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. They're probably not going to be answered until this thing is over. I pray for the brothers and sisters in Ukraine every day, but I also pray for peace every day, because this is a conflict, if it is not resolved, if it is not taken care of, can drag the world into World War III very, very quickly. And it's something which should concern us. I mean, in the Olivet Discourse, Yeshua did say that there would be wars and rumors of wars in the days leading up to his return. This conflict would definitely classify as one of those wars and rumors of wars. But yeah, I've got a lot of questions, because I know that President Trump, he wants the bloodshed to stop. He wants there to be an honorable truce, an honorable peace. Russia, what are you doing? From Charisma. And of course, why do we go to Charisma? Because whether we like it or not, Charisma probably influences more Messianic people than any other publication or resource out there. That's just as information. This is from yesterday. Will new Pope finally spill the truth about UFOs? Don't hold your breath. So yesterday, there were some more alternative news sources which picked this question up about what does the Vatican know or not know about extraterrestrials. Here you got Charisma talking about it. So if you just scroll down just a little bit, it's not like the Vatican has been totally silent on the subject. In 2008, Father Jose Gabriel Funes, then director of the Vatican Observatory, told La Osservatore Romano, hope I pronounced the Italian correctly, that believing in extraterrestrials does not contradict our faith and that aliens could be our brothers. It was a headline-grabbing moment, but predictably there was no deeper follow-up, no files unsealed, no Vatican X-Files release, just a soft, comfortable comment with no teeth. All right, one of the things which is going to become more and more of an issue as we move into the future, and I'm saying this is information, is the issue of exotheology. There's not that much out there about exotheology. Sometimes it's also called astrotheology. What would it mean for believers in God, the Bible, if we had evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations? Not necessarily, microbes on some other planet or, jellyfish type things, under the ice of Europa, something like that, but just, sentient beings and other civilizations. That is going to become more and more of an issue. And indeed, for an institution like the Vatican, what do you have in your archives? Have you interacted with interdimensional beings claiming to be aliens or what have you? So there's talk about that, and yes, even a Charisma picks it up. Okay, and then our last story, I said we didn't have that much today, specifically in news, also from Charisma. Supernatural warfare, why Christians need a bigger toolbox for what's coming. And of course, what's the picture? UFOs, Nephilim, and demons. So the world is changing faster than most of us can keep up with. Absolutely agree with that. And if you think the growing conversation around UFOs, aliens, and strange aerial phenomenon can just be explained away with, quote unquote, it's demons, you might want to think again. Okay, so there are a lot of people, they just automatically conclude this is all just demons, or it's people hallucinating, or whatever it is. It's a weather balloon, it's top secret aircraft, and a lot of it, by the way, is a weather balloon or top secret aircraft or some satellite which fell out of orbit. But the younger someone is, and we'll close with this, the younger someone is, the more likely they are to have been influenced by science fiction. And along with that, they're going to think without any doubt that the God of creation probably has other stories playing out in the universe. And I've got people in my extended family who are relatively conservative evangelicals, but they say, look, the universe is too ancient, it's too vast, it's too big. Of course, God's got other things going on, on the other side of the galaxy or the other side of the universe. And maybe we just have to wait for the Messiah to return and then inform us in person. But the canned line from a lot of the past years, well, it's just all demons, it's all Satan. They're going to be people who push back and they're going to challenge you if that's what your conclusion is. So what it means is, of course, that the conversations are going to get more and more interesting. And how prepared are today's Messianic people for that? Probably not as prepared as various evangelicals or even various Jewish people are. But that's part of why we now have Messianic Insider 5 times a week as part of our ongoing conversation, and noting what these news articles are, because part of apologetics is directly engaging with uncomfortable positions, uncomfortable topics, and opinions we don't always agree with, or perhaps we've never even heard before. Theology is frequently created in an environment of conflict. So we're here to mediate some of that conflict and make sure it doesn't get out of control. So our episode today, a little shorter, but I definitely know that there is no shortage of activity in the world, and we'll definitely see what tomorrow brings us. As always, my friends, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and donations toward our ministry efforts. You can give online at outreachisrael.net/support. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.